We got a standard RB30 head gasket in the gasket kit we bought for the engine, but we're not going to use that. It's just a graphited thing. We're going to use a multi-layered steel head gasket for it, and also head studs just to clamp the head down a bit more. It's just a bit of insurance. They don't cost much. It's well worth doing if you've got the engine apart. This was originally all we were going to do to it, just do the head and put some studs in it, but yeah, things change. So it's almost ready to go on. One thing I will mention is getting the head surface, the deck surface flat and nice and even. On an engine like this, what we do is use a knife sharpening stone, which you can just buy from anywhere. I bought this at BCF, like a fishing shop. This gets it nice and flat and consistent across the deck. So obviously it's best to get one that actually spans the entire width of the deck, which this one does. And it's quite time consuming, but you don't really want to leave it with a sort of a swirly sort of sandpaper finish or anything like that. This is your best bet to get a good seal with a multi-layered steel head gasket. The old graphited gaskets take up a lot of imperfections. That's why they used them. Multi-layered steel less so. It's got sealant stuff on it, but it's not as tolerant. So using this rather, like we weren't going to get the block decked or anything like that. That wasn't really in the scope of the build. So this is a good trick to get everything nice and smooth and flat and consistent across the deck. So cost bugger all, just takes a bit of time. When you put the studs in, you got to check that they're all in at the same height. This is probably the first engine I've ever put studs in that they were at the same height, so I'm thankful for that. A lot of the time you got to, if the way they've drilled the holes is inconsistent, you got to get like small ball bearings and drop in there to try and get the stud height, because you do want them to be finger tight so they aren't moving around when you're trying to put the nuts on. So yay, that was easy. Sometimes you win. So we've already cleaned up the deck. We've got to drop the head gasket on. Always check that the head gasket is correct for your engine. There is a lot of variance in engines, even in the same series. Make sure it even comes with a sheet of paper that says exactly that. Yes, it should be right, but just check it, because you could be in for a big repair job if it's not. Check your dowel locations. Make sure all the oil holes, feed holes are exposed. And also these little rivets, they should always be in free air. They should not be pressing down against the block, because that'll stop it from seating properly. So what I just said is exactly what it says on the packet that you get with the Commodore gasket. So it's all common sense stuff, but you do need to use a bit. The head's already been serviced. Everything's been done to it. It's got new valve springs in it. It's clean, but we obviously give it a little once over, make sure that it is clean enough for our standards. And then we can drop it on and start dropping in the washers and nuts. They'll probably have to be fed in there. They're usually not as easy to get in as they look, especially when you've got studs. You don't have to use this stuff, but you're an idiot if you don't. And that's not just on ARP bolts, on any bolt that you want to be torqued up to the correct specification. This is nothing special, it's just molybdenum grease. You can use that assembly lube, which is basically very similar. It is much better than engine oil. You will get the correct torque setting if you use this. It basically just reduces the friction when you're trying to do up the nut between both the thread and between the washer and between the head. So just use it. It's just CV grease, molybdenum disulfide. Bolts are much better when they've got that on it. As I said, we have had the head serviced. It is good to go. My head guy refuses to put the camshaft back in the head because he's had too many less than bright people bend valves by bolting it on with the camshaft in the wrong position relative to the pistons. So we'll have to assemble all that. I did give it to him fully assembled because you can remove these without taking anything off them. The head bolts are exposed. But that's his policy, so we will have to assemble it ourselves, which can be done after the head's on. So we've just got to give it a clean up. They've like hot tank dipped it and cleaned it all up and everything, but you occasionally get a little bit of machining swarf in the holes, so you just got to give it a good once over, make sure there's nothing in the way, make sure the oil gallery is clear. I never ever sandblast heads anymore, or have them sandblasted, because it will end in tragedy on a modern head that's got complicated oil passages in it. The sand will always end up in a place that you do not want it and cause problems. So my advice is don't bother sandblasting, just dip it in a tank. If it's a modern head, if it's just an old pushrod thing that is simple as anything, sure, go nuts. But generally speaking, you're best not to. The sand is the devil's work, and it will get in where you do not want it, and you just cannot get it out. There's passages that have been blanked, drilled this way and that way, and there's little orifices, and it'll only come out after you've run the engine for 20 minutes, and the oil washes it into everything and kills the engine. So don't do it. We didn't film the head service. Our cylinder head guy is not that keen on being on camera, but if you do want to see the process of doing a machining or service job on a cylinder head, you can have a look at the Modifying Mum's Car and Mighty Car Mods. They did a really good coverage of it, of the process and the machinery involved, and it'll give you an idea of why you're paying the money you pay to it. It's a fairly specialist job.
The cylinder head is given a clean with the schmutz remover, and it's then installed onto the block and seated onto the locating dowels. The ARP washers and nuts are then coated in the fastener lubricant and installed onto the head studs and tightened to spec in the correct order.
We've got this reground cam that was supplied by the owner. I have no idea what size it is. Let's say it's a stage 2 and live with it. It comes with some machined lifter plates to go. It's had it's had the base circle ground off it to change the lift, etc. So the lifter plates are then have the same amount taken off them that drops it down, so the lifter movement is correct. So I'm sure it'll sound hectic and make lots of choo-choo noises out of the turbo.
What's up?
I was about to explain how the cam thrust and retainer plate works on this engine, but it looks like I needed to explain it to the owner of this camshaft before he sent it back for regrind, because he broke it trying to get it out. So that thrust collar's broken from presumably jamming screwdrivers in there trying to get the cam out. When that thing needs to come out. So that's the seal housing, but it's also the thrust and retainer plate. So you have to actually take that off to get the camshaft out. So buggerlugs that owned this cam in some hectic yellow VL that wanted an exchange reground one Obviously didn't know that, so just bashed away at it or levered it or something and broke that on the way through. Probably broke it and then realised that you've got to take this out, because I doubt he would have got it out any other way. So that's buggered. That can go back to the reground guy. That probably should have noticed it.
What happens now then? We're a bit stuck, eh?
I think we'll give Golby's a call and get a new one.
Overnight parts from Toowoomba.
Hopefully.
They're good like that, eh?
Very speedy service.
Dolby Side Ben speaking.
Benjamin, it's Benjamin calling from the SKID factory.
Oh, hey buddy, what's going on?
Hey man. Hey, we ran into a bit of troubles with this VL. The camshaft the customer supplied has got a bit of damage to it, so wondering if you could recommend something for us. I do believe you've got some of those in stock.
Yeah man, got a fair few different sizes and stuff. What turbo are you using on it?
So it's a 3582 with a 106 housing.
Yeah, sweet.
And
manual or auto, man?
auto with a 3/8 stall, Al? Yeah, 3/8 stall.
Yeah, sweet. Let's just have a quick look what's on the shelf, man. So given that housing's a bit bigger, probably want to go something decent. Probably like a 272 degree.
Yeah, cool man. You're the expert here, so
Yeah, man, I'd go with that for sure.
yeah,
I've done
sweet.
it a few times before with that size housing, so I reckon that'd be the go for sure.
Cool. Can you send one of those up to me?
Yeah, man, I'll get it on TNT in the next hour, and you should probably see it tomorrow before lunch, I'd say.
Yes, sweet. Overnight parts, and just flick us through an invoice. Email an invoice would be great.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's no stress. I'll email it through when I get a minute.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Too easy, man. Have a good Tuesday.
You too, dude. See ya.
See you, buddy.
Sorted. Overnight parts from Toowoomba coming on their way. I got shit on my face.
Big black line, even more now.